Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman, and today I'm talking with my friend Karen Finn, who is an American based in the UK and who specializes in menopause and intermittent fasting. Karen herself started having menopausal symptoms around the age of 39, and at the time she had 2 young children and a busy health journalism career. And her growing list of symptoms included fatigue, hot flashes, insomnia, irritability, brain fog, memory loss, overwhelm, loss of libido, weight gain, and vertigo. And what she found was that they were all related to her hormones and not just her stressful life. And what she also found was that vastly reducing the sugar she was eating made all the difference to her menopause symptoms. We'll get to our chat in just a minute. But just before, I wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources about improving your health and losing weight by cutting sugar, then I have plenty for you. Come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration, pictures of meals, short reels, useful info to get you started on your life after sugar, as well as thought-provoking quotes and even sometimes pictures of our cat, so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life even if you don't eat sugar. You can also check out my TikTok account at Netta_lifeaftersugar. And if cravings are getting in the way and causing you to fall off the wagon, then I have 5 tips for you, especially if you're an intermittent faster, to help you get rid of cravings. Go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. You can also find my simple guide for getting more energy with less sugar by going to aftersugarclub.com, scrolling down to the bottom and clicking on Simple Guide. And while you're there at aftersugarclub.com, you can also have a look at the videos I've made for you to show you what to eat that doesn't contain added sugars, where to find real whole foods at the grocery store, and also how to look after your gut health with fermented foods and drinks. So to get those free resources, go to aftersugarclub.com. Okay, let's get to my chat with Karen. All right, so I'm talking today with Karen Finn. And Karen, can you just tell us a little bit about your story and your relationship with sugar?
Yes, sure. Thank you for having me on here to start with. Yes, my story is about menopause, relevant to this podcast. I had an early menopause at age 43, and it kind of quite took me by surprise, as it would, because I thought it was something that happened when you're you think of someone who's much older. And I had just had a baby at 38, and so that was like the last thing on my mind. But I started having symptoms shortly after I had my daughter at 38. And it's hard to separate menopause symptoms from life symptoms, just circumstances of life, especially when you have two small children I had at the time. And so I waited for a while, but then finally at the age of 43, I got tested and found out that I was postmenopausal. So I was having a lot of symptoms like weight gain, insomnia, feeling overwhelmed about things really easily, and just getting really stressed out at work really easily, and very low energy levels, and kind of all that stuff led me to reach for more sugary foods as well, as
Yeah.
you know, those things can do, especially, yeah, like if you're in an office environment too, if you're stressed and whatever, there's cookies out all the time and stuff. So so over that time, I kind of did the diet thing on and off, where like I wouldn't, or the get healthy thing, where I wouldn't touch sugar for a few months, and sometimes also like bread and stuff like that, carbs. Um, but it was always like a finite diet, so I'd always go back onto it after the diet finished. Um, and then this kind of went on for several years, and I was still feeling mostly rubbish, I would say, still having symptoms. Um, and then I discovered intermittent fasting at the age of 50. And so I would say by that point, I was concerned with the weight gain I was experiencing. But I was also more and more trying to feel better, because I was having these menopausal symptoms. And I kind of felt like an 80-year-old woman.
Really?
So um, I had zero energy, and I like chronic insomnia. Those were probably the worst things.
Mm.
Um, Also, some other symptoms, which I'll mention later. Um, but so even when I started fasting, I still ate sugar in the same way I had been doing. But then my weight loss stalled, and so I decided to get over the plateau. I decided to cut out sugar and bread, I think, too, for a few months, and then that kick-started the weight loss again. And then I gradually started eating sugar again, but a couple of things happened.
Yeah.
So the first thing was that I realized that fasting was much easier without the sugar.
Hmm.
And, I made it through the day, like it was just a doddle, basically. And the second thing was that I kind of lost my taste for it. And so, like, things that I used to love didn't taste nice anymore. And I kind of like everything started tasting super sweet. So, which I know you've mentioned before in a lot of
Yeah.
your um, podcasts and things. And so, like, I would only eat milk chocolate. I didn't like dark chocolate. I thought it was so bitter and disgusting. Um, but then that kind of switched, and now I can only eat dark chocolate, which is like 85% cocoa, and it's really quite bitter actually. It doesn't have a lot of sugar in it. But just things like that, my taste buds changed. And I like these days I am kind of an everything in moderation sugar eater. So I have it sometimes, but I don't crave it like I used to. And I don't feel like I'm a slave to it anymore. But I know health wise, I'd be better off without it, definitely. But I kind of try to just listen to my body and not stress about it too much, or not agonize or beat myself up if I eat it. Try to have kind of a healthy relationship with it. And so I do know that I feel better, the less sugar I eat. But I haven't given it up completely yet, but I would say it's becoming less and less appealing to me. And with time, I think I'm just letting it take its natural course, and I'm kind of like on a downward trajectory. So I think it'll kind of just peter out at some point, you know?
Yeah, it's likely to do that. And can I just ask you how old you are now?
Yes, I'm 55.
55. So you've been in menopause for like
12
12.
years. Yeah.
Yeah. And did I understand correctly that when you got diagnosed, as it were, with being menopausal or postmenopausal at the age of 43 is when you started reducing sugar, or did you reduce it before then?
No, I started reducing sugar more, I would say, well, it was more like on and off when I was dieting. I would cut it out. It was very sporadic. So
Okay.
I'd cut it out for a few months, but then I'd go back on it. But then when I started intermittent fasting about when I was 50, about 4.5 years ago, that's when the downward trajectory kind of really started.
Okay.
When I kind of lost my taste for it, and
Yeah.
I don't feel like it has a hold on me anymore.
Yeah, I get that totally. All right. So, can you explain a little bit what happened to you, your body, when you hit menopause, and in general with the women that you work with, what are the sort of the common symptoms, physical symptoms, especially when someone hits menopause?
Well, certain things are very unique. Everybody's journey is unique, but certain fundamental physiological things happen to everybody. So basically, the average age of menopause is 51, and that's officially when a woman hasn't had her period in 12 consecutive months. So what's happened is that her reproductive hormones have declined to a point where she can no longer reproduce. And so that's what happened to me. I don't know why it happened to me earlier than normal. I have some ideas about it, but the doctors couldn't say, why. So because I had an early menopause and I was on the Mirena coil for birth control before that, and that had stopped my periods. So I wasn't able to know that my period, like usually one of the first symptoms is when people's periods start getting erratic. Like it could be not every month, or it could be heavier or much lighter. And so that wasn't happening to me. So I didn't have that to go on. And then all of a sudden it's postmenopausal. So, but normally what happens is perimenopause, which is the time leading up to menopause. And that can start as early as your mid 30s. And what's happening is your reproductive hormones, which are estrogen, or if you're in the UK, estrogen.
Thank you.
Progesterone, yeah. I never know which one to say. Progesterone and testosterone to a lesser extent. They're all on a downward trend, but the estrogen is the main one that causes a lot of the symptoms, the declining estrogen. And during perimenopause, you're still getting your periods, but your estrogen can fluctuate quite wildly, and that can cause irregular periods, like I said, and other symptoms. And basically, pretty much every part of a woman's body is affected by estrogen. So, like brain, heart, skin, digestion, bones, muscles, like you name it, there's estrogen receptors all over our body. So, when it starts to decline, many women can have these physical and mental symptoms. And so, a lot of people come to me for weight gain. That's one of the main ones. But also, people have like hot flashes or flushes if you're in the UK. But some women don't even have those. So, it can creep up on you and you don't realize you're having these symptoms. So it can be like poor sleep, which I had no idea was related. So maybe my insomnia was my perimenopause. Maybe I was having other symptoms, but I didn't know they were perimenopause symptoms because I had a young child.
Well, yeah, you had a young child. I mean, may not even have been because of menopause. I mean, when we have young children, we don't sleep that well.
Yeah. So it's really hard to pick apart and untangle what's have life circumstances and menopause. And I don't know, you don't really have to untangle them. I think they're naturally gel together. So like there are loads of symptoms. They can be physical or mental. Some of the most common physical ones that people come to me are poor sleep and achiness, achy joints, digestive issues, bloating, things like that. And like I said, the weight. Night sweats is kind of like hot flashes in the middle of the night. And then there are also like brain fog and memory problems. Those are some common ones. Low libido. In terms of the mental symptoms, people can have like a low mood or get anxiety, and a lot of women even feel rage. They get like they're like really, they don't know where it comes from. It just seems like it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like PMS,
Yeah, it's like PMS on steroids or something. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's the right analogy, but I guess because it's so unpredictable, because your hormones are going mad. You could be fine one day and then all of a sudden it just hits you. So like your cycle, it's not like you can predict when it's going to happen because your cycle is all out of whack. So I think a lot of women also just feel like they've lost their zest for life, like they kind of just feel flat, and so they want to get their sparkle back and
Yeah.
their joy for life.
Yes,
Uh,
and it corresponds to this time in our lives, late 40s, early 50s, where unless we've had children later in life like you and I did, I was also almost 38 when I had my child. But even so, we're sort of getting to that stage in our lives, late 40s, early 50s, where we're like, oh, is this all there is? Or, this sort of existential angst that I don't know. I mean, I never thought it would be connected to menopause, but I'm hearing that it could be.
I think also, yeah, you're not biologically preparing to raise children anymore. And so you naturally start turning into yourself and looking at your own life more. And
Mm.
maybe, I don't want to say more selfish, but in a good way,
Yeah,
like, looking after yourself more
right. Self-care rather than
your
selfish.
own needs. Yeah, more.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yes. And can you just distinguish for us the difference between premenopause, perimenopause, and menopause itself, and maybe even postmenopause?
Okay. So premenopause is just like your reproductive years. It's not like an official medical term. It's just when you have normal reproductive, you know, from when you have your period, whatever, up to perimenopause, I would say. Then the next stage is perimenopause, where your hormones start declining, and you possibly, I mean, not everybody has symptoms. I don't want to freak people out and list off all these symptoms, because a lot of women sail through it and they don't, they're fine. But it's good to be aware, I think, of what could happen so you can identify it, know how to deal with it. So yeah, so perimenopause, I think the average is like 4 years, but it could be, for some women it could be less, for some women it could be up to 10 years. And that's when you have a lot of the symptoms, especially the like the anxiety and emotional things that happen, because when your estrogen's fluctuating like that, it really impacts your mental health. And so once you haven't had your period for 12 consecutive months, the day of that, like that anniversary, that's menopause. It's really only one day. And then after that day, you're postmenopausal.
Okay. All right.
So
It's like one day, big party. I'm
menopausal,
menopausal.
yeah.
It's over.
Yes.
Yeah, and I imagine it's pretty rare for someone to know that exact day and date, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Because some people, they can go 7 months without having a period and think they're over, they're menopausal, and then they get their period and they're like, damn.
And then what do they have to start the 12-month countdown from that
Yeah,
day?
yeah.
Mhm.
And I mean, I guess it's only for personal, just to know what's going on with you personally. And there's not, I guess it's just something good to know about your own medical situation.
Yeah,
And also, if you're planning to take hormone therapy, it depends what kind of regimen you're taking for hormone therapy and stuff.
yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. So you listed a lot of the most common symptoms in menopause and perimenopause. And can I ask you, what is sort of the normal accepted way, pharmaceutical way, let's call it, that most doctors treat menopause symptoms?
It's hard because it's what they should do or what they do. That's the
Well,
question.
let's talk about what they actually do, and then we can have a chat
Uh,
about what we think they should do.
well, they do lots of different things depending on the doctor. Um, the protocol, at least over here in the UK, is hormone replacement therapy is the first line of treatment.
Okay, because you're in
So,
the UK, even though you're American, right?
so over here, it's hormone replacement therapy. A lot of doctors are still prescribing antidepressants sometimes, and a lot of doctors are also telling women that it's just part of life and to just get on with it. I've heard a lot of stories about female doctors who are even of that in that age bracket who just tell people to suck it up, basically. So yes, hormone replacement therapy, depending on your symptoms. If it's something that's something that you feel like you need support with, and obviously, I guess if you're going to the doctor, you're feeling like you need support. So there's estrogen and progesterone that you can take, and there's different regimens depending on what your personal situation is. Obviously, they look at your history, your health risks and stuff like that. But yeah, they don't usually ask you anything about your diet or your lifestyle.
Really? How surprising.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the doctor, I suppose, but in general, as a general rule, I don't want to, make a broad statement because maybe if some doctors are listening, they might be offended by that. But as a general rule, in my experience, they don't, unless they're a functional medicine doctor or special.
Yes, nutrition doesn't seem to come into the equation with most regular doctors.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my experience.
Yeah, and sometimes also, so you can get progesterone and estrogen combination. And in some cases, like if you don't have a womb anymore, you can just take estrogen. And then some people can also take testosterone, but that's mainly, at least here in the UK, that's mainly to address low libido. So that's kind of controversial here. A lot of doctors won't do it.
Okay. Yeah. I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews. And when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar. And so we just touched on the sort of, I can't say on the fact, but on our personal experiences of doctors not necessarily asking us about our diet, but does diet, in your experience, does diet actually affect menopause symptoms?
Yes, absolutely. It can have a massive impact on anything from brain fog to weight, obviously, but also bloating, so many different symptoms it can affect, and inflammation and stuff like that, especially sugar and processed foods. And processed foods usually have a lot of chemical additives and unhealthy oils and stuff. That all causes inflammation, and inflammation can aggravate your symptoms. So as a menopausal woman, and ideally it's best to not wait until you're having the symptoms, it's best to start earlier. It's important to eat the foods that like promote good gut health, and fermented foods, sauerkraut, kimchi, stuff like that. Lots of vegetables, and also to help keep your blood sugar regulated, because when you're menopausal, blood sugar regulation is more difficult, more challenging, and also good gut health balance and stuff. And that's because of the lower estrogen. And also eating for bone health. Bone health is very important in menopause, because as you get older, I mean, as everybody gets older, their bone mass diminishes. But once you're postmenopausal, the rate really increases. So you have to really do a lot to make sure you're looking after your bone health.
And so, how can you do that? Because most people drink milk, but not everybody like myself, I don't drink milk. I consume fermented dairy, but some people are dairy intolerant. Do you know if there's an alternative to dairy for bone health?
Also, like green leafy vegetables, broccoli, cabbage, okra, soya bean, like tofu, nuts, fish where like sardines where the bones are in there. So there's other ways to get calcium and yeah, I mean some people supplement as well, but there's lots of foods that you can get your calcium from.
Yeah, smashing. Yes. Okay. And so you're an intermittent faster, as am I.
Yes.
What does intermittent fasting have to do with menopause?
um, well, for me, it has everything to do with menopause because it's transformed my menopause. It can help balance your hormones. And when I say hormones, I don't mean just your reproductive hormones. All the hormones are linked and if have an impact on each other. So if one thing is a bit off, it kind of has a domino effect on other hormones. It kind of helps you optimize the hormones in your body and how they're working. So yeah, it's not going to reinstate your lost estrogen, but it can kind of make your body, if there is estrogen being produced still in your body, it can help optimize that and make use out of that, get the best out of it, bang for your buck or whatever. And that has a knock-on effect on how you feel. And so like menopausal women in general are more sensitive. You just become more sensitive to things because of the lower estrogen. And yeah, so the fasting can really help with that. So the first thing, like when my clients who are menopausal or perimenopausal, what they first notice most often are reduced hot flashes and fewer aches and pains and less bloating and better sleep. Those are like the top things that people notice right off the bat, usually before they've even lost any weight. If that's it doesn't have to be for weight loss, but if they're also looking to lose weight, a lot of times they notice these non-scale victories first.
Yeah, that's huge, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. And so like the reduction, it reduces inflammation. Intermittent fasting reduces inflammation, and that helps improve gut health, and it helps to regulate blood sugar and insulin as well. And so like basically all these things that are more challenging as a menopausal woman because your body is just changed. Intermittent fasting can kind of help you work with what you've got. um, and so that can, it can also help with brain fog and digestive issues and even mental health as well, because fasting triggers the production of GABA in your brain. And it's, I didn't actually write down what it stands for because I can't pronounce it.
Oh, that's an acronym for some.
It's a neurotransmitter,
Yeah.
and it's like a neurochemical in your brain, and it has an anti-anxiety effect. It's a calming thing, and so it can literally help you feel calmer. And I know, like some of my clients who were struggling with mental, anxiety and stuff, found that when they started intermittent fasting, it definitely calmed them down and like helped with the chatter that was constantly going on in their head as well.
Yeah.
So it's not like a cure-all for menopause, intermittent fasting, but it can help you have a much smoother ride, I would say. And it can lay the groundwork for being able to make other healthy lifestyle choices, which I think sometimes are hard to make. Like if you have no energy, if you're not sleeping well, it can help with sleep as well. So you have more energy and then you're more likely to exercise, which is important. Good nutrition as well. It kind of draws you, you're kind of drawn to start eating healthier just naturally, intuitively. And it's a good way, it's a good thing, it's a good tool to have in your toolkit along with all the other things that you need to do to have a healthy and a smoother menopause, I would say.
Can I ask you what your fasting regimen is for you and what you eat in your window?
Yeah. Well, I kind of change it around. I'm in maintenance now, so sometimes I usually do around 18 hours fasting the 6 hours eating window, but I change it around. Like today I did 20 hours, just because the way things worked out today. Sometimes like at the weekends, I'll do 16 hours. So I don't think it's, necessarily, you don't have to stick to the same thing every day. It has to fit in with your life. And so what I eat is I usually open my window with some kind of a protein, like a chicken or salmon or something like that, or even something with beans in it and nuts, and then I have like lots of vegetables, like a big salad or something like that, and healthy fat like avocado, olive oil. And I try to combine that. For me, that's what works best for me and keeps me kind of going and fills me up. And I find when I kind of anchor my meals with protein, that works the best for me. But also the fiber and the vegetables and stuff like that. And but then sometimes I'll have like Greek yogurt or skyr. I don't know if
It's like a Scandinavian yogurt, right?
yeah. I think it's actually technically a cheese, but it
Oh,
looks like
okay.
Greek yogurt. It has the same consistency as Greek yogurt. But yeah, sometimes I'll have that with nuts and berries and seeds or something like that. I mean, if I'm opening with something like that, I'm so full, like sugar doesn't even come into the equation. I don't even, I'm so satisfied with that I don't even, if I was thinking about eating something with sugar, it's just like, oh no, I don't really, fancy that anymore. Um, and then, yeah, sometimes I'll have a snack in the mid-afternoon, a coffee, and I don't know, sometimes I'll have like cheese and apple or something. And then I just have dinner, kind of the same, more protein, vegetable. I eat potatoes and stuff like that. I'm not like a
You're not
anti-potato
keto.
or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not keto or anything. But I think just with the intermittent fasting, I kind of, I'm not as like, I used to love bread and potato and like that potato, like high carby stuff more, but just naturally, I'm not really drawn to that as much anymore.
Mm.
So, although I do really like sweet potatoes a lot, they're probably too sweet for you. I don't know.
I've never liked them, and I didn't develop a taste for them. Yeah, they do taste too sweet for me now. Crazy.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just try to eat like whole foods most of the time. And, I'm not perfect. I
Good.
definitely, I'm not like smug about it or anything because I definitely, sometimes I'll have cake and I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on the Life After
Oh,
Sugar
you're allowed
podcast.
to say whatever. Yeah, we accept you as you are.
Um, but generally, like as time goes on, I'm more drawn to the whole foods and things that you can find in the outside aisles of the supermarket.
Yes, yes, definitely. And if you're somewhere, or if there's a special occasion or a celebration, do you continue with your fasting? Do you break your fast? Do you eat something that you wouldn't normally choose? How do you handle those kinds of special occasions?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, like, I don't usually drink alcohol, for example, but if it's a special occasion, maybe I'll have a glass of fizz or something like that. But that doesn't really appeal to me much anymore either. But yeah, I'll just kind of like if I know I'm going to have a late night, I might open my window later or something. Or maybe on that day, I'll just decide have, a longer window and only fast whatever 14 hours or something on that day.
Which is
Um,
still plenty to get the health benefits.
yeah, and I yeah, I might eat. I don't like avoid, if I'm being served something that I wouldn't normally eat, I don't recoil in horror or anything.
Yeah.
um, I'll just decide whether to eat it or not. And I try not to stress about it too much. I just see how I feel in the moment. And I don't really, yeah, I might eat a few more junky things like some crisps or something like that. But then I just go back the next day to the usual thing
Yeah,
that
they
I,
don't trigger some sort of slippery slope for you.
no, no, on the contrary, I think it makes me want to go back to eating healthier because I think I am more aware of foods that make me feel crappy.
Right.
And
Yes. I think I found intermittent fasting has made me into this foodie.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I was always interested in food before, but it's almost like intermittent fasting kind of makes you more focused on not just your own self-care, but on the foods that will get you there.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think, especially like in the beginning when I'm teaching people how to start intermittent fasting, I think people can get discouraged because they're like, I'm eating everything. I don't know. They get kind of like panicky that they're eating all this junk. But I'm like, just trust the process. It'll happen. And then like all of a sudden you'll wake up one day and you'll want to eat a brownie and you'll take one bite and you'll be completely disgusted by it.
Yes, and it's a very common approach, I would say, or a common belief in the intermittent fasting world, I found, of eat whatever you want in your window, which a lot of people interpret as eat a load of junk in your window. And then I come along and you come along and we say, well, you can also change the whatever you want, that definition, or it will actually change naturally as you continue your intermittent fasting lifestyle. That, like, as you were saying, your desire for the junk, usually, not always, and sometimes people need a bit of help, but usually it goes down, and what you actually end up desiring as eat whatever you want, you desire the foods that make you feel your best.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I see that usually a few weeks in with people. They
Me
really
too.
start noticing a difference
Yes,
where they
definitely.
used to like sit, have at night, they would have like a pack of cookies or something. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, maybe I'll have one and then that's it. But that's like a huge win.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. This is fascinating, that link between menopause, intermittent fasting, and sugar or processed or junk foods. You know, that is amazing that there's that link and that you know how to handle it.
Yeah, I think everybody, just as with anything with intermittent fasting on its own, everybody's unique and everybody has to kind of figure out what foods work best for their body. But, usually sugar is not on that list or more than usually. And just, yeah, with menopause, it's just, like I said, everything in your body is a bit more sensitive to things. And also like alcohol, your body has less water in it. And so your body's working harder to kind of process this stuff and get it out of your system. And
Yes,
then
yeah.
it can't, if it's trying to metabolize all this stuff that's not good for it, then it can't focus on the healing stuff.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Totally. Oh, thank you, Karen. If someone wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
So I have my website is karenfinn.net, and I have an Instagram handle, which is just Karen Finn Health. And I have a Facebook group, just a free private Facebook group called Fasting the Number 4 Menopause and More.
Yeah, I
Um,
love that group. I'm in that group.
so yeah,
Smashing.
so those are the main ways, and just my personal Facebook profile as well, which
All
is
right. I'll put that info along with the show notes for this episode. And thank you, Karen, for talking to me. It's really been a fascinating chat.
thank you for having me. It's been great. I appreciate it.
Ah, how great to talk with Karen. I feel like we're soul sisters in many ways. And actually, Karen has agreed to come into the After Sugar Club to talk with the After Sugar Club members and to answer their questions about perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause in relation to their intermittent fasting lifestyles and, of course, sugar. And to get in touch with Karen, scroll down and you'll see her link in the show notes. And if you're committed to your journey to better health, weight loss, and freedom from the hold that sugar has on you, then join us in the After Sugar Club. When you sign up, you'll get all the support, the accountability, and the guidance you need to break free from the diet culture as well as from the emotional dependency that you have on sugar. Go to aftersugarclub.com and click on the big green button, Join the Club, to see everything that's included in the After Sugar Club and in the Premium After Sugar Club. See you there. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.